Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS once again, ready to talk some classic Doctor Who, including my favorite Doctor, the Fifth Doctor. And this time I'm joined by one of my favorite people in the known universe, someone who's just so delightful. I enjoy talking to so much. So please welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Once again, Holly Mack from the Five Years Fangirls podcast. Yay, Holly.
Hey, thanks for the warm
Yay.
welcome.
Welcome back.
Glad to be back. Thank you. Hey, and great episode last week, by the way.
Oh, thank you very
Lori
much.
did awesome.
Yeah, I thought she did great too. So I know we got a little feedback here and there about Lori's first appearance on Next Stop Everywhere. Hopefully not her last.
Oh, I hope not.
But I thought she did an amazing job. I was very proud of her, especially since she was a little bit nervous about coming on and doing this. But like we were talking about before we started recording, Holly, I thought it worked because with Jesse there and myself and Lori, I thought had a nice little safe space that she could feel comfortable doing this, at least hopefully for the first time. Now, whether I'm able to get her back for a second episode, well, you're all going to have to help me, kind of twist her arm a little bit on that one. Encourage her.
Lori, I hate to
politely.
Lori, I hate to tell you, once you do one episode, you kind of want to do another and another. just warning you.
Well, I hope so, because I thought it'd be a lot of fun, and it certainly, it kind of changed things up, and I think it also made Jesse's episode, his return, a little more special. So, I was very grateful that Jesse wanted to join us. He was pretty insistent about hey, if you're doing this, I want to be there, and I'm obviously not going to tell him no, right? Even though he's supposed to be recovering from his surgery.
Yeah.
But it was very nice of him, and he seemed to enjoy it, and he seemed like he had a good time, and, so hopefully we can persuade him to come back to the podcast sooner than he has planned, so rather than later.
It was good hearing his voice, but Jesse, hey, put your feet up, you recover, come back when you want, come back anytime.
Yeah, he's got a little bit more important things on his plate right now, especially his recovery, but I know he was talking about what he wanted to step away from the podcast for a while.
Completely understandable.
But, I'm sure he wouldn't mind everybody letting him know how much they miss him on Next Stop Everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right.
Yes.
In the meantime, though, I think Holly and I have it covered because here at episode 235, we're going to be discussing Black Orchid today. And this was the fifth serial from season 19 in 1982, written by Terence Dudley, who wrote the previous story 4 to Doomsday, which is actually Peter Davison's first filmed episode, not Castrovalva. And then he also wrote the later episode, The King's Demons, from season 20, and he wrote the K9 and Company pilot, A Girl's Best Friend. So before we got the Sarah Jane Adventures, in the 80s, they attempted to do a Sarah Jane spin-off series. And it was Sarah Jane and K9, and obviously K9 apparently got top billing, because you notice Sarah Jane's name wasn't anywhere in this. She's the company, I guess, to K9.
Yeah. Basically, she became the tin dog, like he didn't want to become.
Right. So she became the sidekick to the tin dog. She became the Mickey, apparently.
Yeah.
But I think it worked out best in the long run, though, because of getting the Sarah Jane Adventures. So maybe it's for the best that this pilot didn't work out. It's one of the things I actually wouldn't mind talking about that pilot. So maybe somewhere down the line, that could be that could be something interesting, I think, to discuss.
Yes.
As a little bit of obscure trivia, I guess. So Black Orchid, you were very kind enough to join me here, Holly, and I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So before we get into our breaking things down a little bit more, what are your general thoughts on this one? Because this is a very interesting, it's only a two-parter, so it's only about 45 minutes running time total. Pretty much like the format of a modern era episode. So what was it about this one that made you enjoy it enough to want to discuss it?
I like for the setting and the pacing and just that time period, and it gets poo-pooed quite a bit, and I'm scratching my head as to why. I mean, it's a good story, air of mystery, little touches of Unicorn and the Wasp. I mean, there's no murder mystery.
Interesting you mentioned that episode, I should say. But I'll leave that hanging there for now. But you definitely enjoyed it. That's good. That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't really see why this should get any hate because, I mean, it's just, I think maybe people don't like it because there isn't, apart from, the Doctor and his companions, this isn't really a science fiction story.
Right.
It's sort of as historical, but it's not really historically based on anything. It just happens to be like, apart from the Doctor and his companions,
really no
set in the 1920s, a period piece, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And there's really no evil alien or monster.
No.
Because as we find out from the storyline, somebody did something that they shouldn't have when they came back, and now they're facing the repercussions from it.
Yeah. All we have is a poorly, disfigured man who's kind of become a little unhinged as a result of that traumatic experience. So hardly
not quite Heart of Darkness, but
it's hardly Davros or the Cybermen or the Daleks. So for people expecting that kind of thing, I could see their disappointment. But it doesn't always have to be about, the big monsters, right?
Right.
It's just a very different type of story. And interestingly, it's not really one that we see much of today.
No. And I thought it was kind of cool that they did a double with the actress who played Nyssa and had her play a dual role.
Yeah, Sarah Sutton.
She had a fitting image. And it's just like, you guys could have played with that a little bit here, too, because when I first saw it, I'm just like, okay, wait a minute. Is the other shoe going to drop? We're going to find out that Nyssa had a twin, and this is the twin.
So
What's the deal?
So you were kind of just reading reading a little bit more into it, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Well, one of the things that, we're going to get into this when we get into our topics, but since you brought it up, one of the things I was a little surprised by, especially when I was doing my rewatch this past week, they make a big deal about talking about the mole on Anne's shoulder, right? That's the way to distinguish her from Nyssa, but that never gets really brought into play.
No, it doesn't. It just kind of gets, swept under the rug, like, oh, okay.
Yeah, Tegan is just so that Tegan can say, well, I know how to tell them apart, but she didn't have to tell them apart because it never came up.
Right.
It's almost like Chekhov's mole in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this story, obviously, it was directed by Ron Jones, starring, of course, Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor, Janet Fielding as Tegan Jovanka, Sarah Sutton, as Holly mentioned, in the dual role, this time, as Nyssa of Traken, and Anne Talbot, the fiancée of Lord Charles Cranleigh, and Matthew Waterhouse as Adric. So obviously this is the episode right before Earthshock.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably a good thing he ate as much food as he did because he gets killed off in the next story. So, poor Adric.
Yes.
So, guest cast this time, we have Michael Cochrane as Lord Charles Cranleigh, no relation, who turns up later in a Sylvester McCoy era story as Redfur's Fen Cooper in Ghostlight, which Zan Sprouse and I talked not that long ago here on the podcast. He also played Murgat in a Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio, Brotherhood of the Daleks. He also played Lieutenant Colonel Brooke in another Big Finish audio for the Seventh Doctor era, No Man's Land. And he was also in the 1997 movie version of The Saint. That's the one with Val Kilmer.
Okay.
And he was also recently on The Crown and played Reverend Travis on Downton Abbey, which I find kind of amusing because this story in some strange way actually reminds me a little bit of like what if it's like what if Doctor Who did a Downton Abbey story? It would be probably Black
Right.
Orchid, right? Or
Yeah.
the Unicorn and the Wasp, perhaps. But yeah,
Right.
but I just thought it was kind of interesting that he actually turned up on Downton Abbey. Barbara Murray plays Lady Madge Cranleigh. The one who decides, I'm going to just throw the doctor under the bus for my son George's murders. Thanks, Lady Cranleigh. She's notable for the one reason I thought was interesting was that she was in the 1972 movie version of Tales from the Crypt. So there was actually a movie version that came out like a decade or so before the TV show that was on HBO.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people do because these were both based on this comics company called EC Comics, which published Tales from the Crypt comics back in the 50s. But yeah, they actually did a movie version before the TV show. So if you're a fan of Tales from the Crypt, you might want to track that down if you're not already aware of it, I guess. We had Moray Watson play Sir Robert Muir, who I thought was a pretty interesting character, especially when he's flirting with Tegan a little bit. Gareth Milne played George Cranleigh, and he was a mortuary attendant in Vengeance on Varos from the Colin Baker era. And he was in the James Bond film For Your Eyes Only, so we have another James Bond connection to Doctor Who. But notably, he was a stuntman during the Peter Davison era. He actually doubles for Davison in this story. And, in addition to doing some of the stunts. So he's primarily a stuntman on Doctor Who. We have the actor Ahmed Khalil as Ditar Latoni, the South American indigenous native who with a lip that helps try to take care of George, his friend. Ivor Salter plays Sergeant Markham. He's the sergeant that goes into the TARDIS with Sir Robert. And he was actually in the two previous Doctor Who stories. He played the Morok commander in the Space Museum, and he played Odysseus in the Mythmakers.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with your Homer and of the Odyssey, that's who he was playing, Odysseus.
Cool.
Yeah, right? I thought it was interesting. Trivia. This story, as we talked about a little bit, when we first started this episode, was the first purely historical adventure for the Doctor, meaning no science fiction elements except for the TARDIS and the regular cast, since the Highlanders back in 1966. So we're talking like 16-year gap there. And
wow.
Kind of sadly, I think, it's also the last purely historical adventure to date, because every story set in the past on Earth since then has had some kind of science fiction element, like a monster or alien or what have you.
Right.
So they've never, they've pretty much abandoned that storytelling concept of doing just the Doctor and his companions, turning up in a time period to meet someone from the past. Without any, alien interference in the story. So, you're kind of curious if they could pull it off in the modern era.
Yeah.
John Nathan Turner originally considered directing this story himself instead of Ron Jones, which would have made him, yeah, I think we dodged that bullet, didn't we?
Yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. Which would have made him the first producer to do so since Barry Letts during the early 1970s, during the Jon Pertwee era. However, due to time constraints, John Nathan Turner abandoned the idea and hired Ron Jones to direct. So, good call.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the very few good calls that John Nathan Turner made during his time as executive producer of Doctor Who.
Yes.
So, I will give J&T points on that one. Good call.
Yes.
According to Peter Davison, he claimed that Terence Dudley, the writer, told him that he wrote the script for a murder mystery series then later found it in a bottom drawer and just turned it into the Doctor Who story Black Orchid.
Cool. I was wondering because I kind of had a murder mystery, before the body started falling. I'm just like,
Right?
I'm getting a murder mystery vibe because when I saw this, it was the first time I saw it. It had been a few years after Highlander the series had gone off the air.
Right.
And Highlander the series had done an episode based in the 20s, 1929, murder mystery with Roger Daltrey as Hugh Fitzcairn called Unusual Suspects, where Roger Daltrey's character of Fitzcairn gets murdered by his black widow of a wife.
And this
So
would be
it was
Roger
just like,
Daltrey of the Who fame.
yes, exactly. Yes.
Right?
And yes. And he completely pulls it off, and it was just, I'm just like, I kind of got that vibe as soon as I popped Black Orchid. I'm like, I'm going to like this because I liked that episode. And sure enough, and then when Unicorn and the Wasp came,
Yeah.
it's like, sign me up.
Well, the BBC, they love to do these kind of murder mystery shows. At least they did back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really surprised by this at all, like you said,
No.
because there's a lot of there shows that were going on there, like Agatha Christie's, Miss Marple, or Poirot. They did a Hercule Poirot series there, and then Sherlock Holmes. They had a Jeremy Brett version of Sherlock Holmes. So it's not really surprising they did that. That
No.
Terrence Dudley recycled that script, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Terrence Dudley, he very nearly wrote the pilot for Doctor Who.
The reboot?
No, the original.
Or the original?
The original.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
A lot of people don't know this one. So when Verity Lambert and David Whitaker received, excuse me, writer Anthony Coburn's draft for The Forest of Fear in June 1963, that was one of the episodes that became part of An Unearthly Child, the original pilot to Doctor Who, because Coburn was the writer of that story. They weren't happy with the story's development, and Lambert asked Dudley to quickly write a replacement. However, he declined, leaving them to apparently, unenthusiastically produce Coburn's An Unearthly Child. And lo, a legend was born. So apparently this, Coburn's script was they weren't really wild about it. And if you're familiar with An Unearthly Child, the very first Doctor Who story, you probably know that it's one of those that I really want to say for an anniversary date to talk about, because we haven't talked about it yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the first episode of that is gold. I love the first part of that because we get the introduction
right
of
there with you.
The Doctor, we get Susan, we get introduced to TARDIS, Ian and Barbara, and they go off on an adventure. And, they get, through circumstances, they travel through time. And it's the perfect pilot episode just on that first episode alone. However,
the rest of the story,
not that great, because they end up in the prehistoric past, so caveman times, right? And as a result, episodes 2 through 4 pretty much drag, because it's when you're introducing this new concept, a time travel through history show, and it's very hard for audiences, especially when they don't really involve dinosaurs, to find prehistoric stories interesting. So that's probably why Doctor Who didn't really take off until the next story, The Daleks, because that obviously was a science fiction story. It was set in the future, and it's what caught the audience's attention, the younger viewers' attention, because they thought the Daleks were just the coolest in the 60s.
Yep.
And that's what really made Doctor Who take off, obviously.
Yeah. And I mean, kudos to them to try to do the fun, it's going to be traveling to different parts in time. and not do the sciencey robots monster of the week thing, but
Yeah,
if it works,
go with it.
gotta go for it.
Well, they obviously intended when Doctor Who started. We've talked about this several times that it was intended to be an educational series for kids to teach kids about history.
Yep.
But obviously, the science fiction elements proved more popular than the historical ones, which is why they gradually phased those out during the Hartnell era.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those like big what ifs. Like what if Terrence Dudley wrote the Doctor Who pilot instead, and would the show have taken off? Who knows? But it's just it's kind of like that road not traveled almost. It's it's kind of like Doctor Who the show's turn left moment.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that just because I just finished watching Loki on Disney Plus with my wife Laura, which we're going to have a lot of fun. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, I should mention that it's very timey-wimey.
Yes.
So if you're a Doctor Who fan and you're not, sure if you want to check out Loki, I highly recommend it for that reason alone. And I'm sure, and Holly, you'll back me up on this, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. And not just so you can, coo over Tom Hiddleston as Loki, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So a couple more trivia bits, and then we'll get started in our topics. But I wanted to mention that Matthew Waterhouse was less than enthusiastic about the dance sequences. So he suggested that Adric would be more interested in the food, just so he wouldn't have to participate in the choreography.
Sounds about right for a boy Adric's age.
Right.
Yes. No dancing, food. Yes, please.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's just kind of funny that Matthew Waterhouse, that was his way to get out of it. And like, I don't want to do the dancing choreography and try to learn how to do these dances. So I'm just gonna. Can we just have Adric eat through most of the story?
Right. Well, and it fits with Adric's character because if memory serves, when Adric first meets up with the Fourth Doctor and I think it was Romana with the vampires, doesn't he get tempted with food?
Yeah,
to
actually,
betray them. Yeah, so
because
it fits perfectly.
Right, because he had stowed away
his character.
Because he had stowed away at the end of Full Circle, the previous story, and he sneaks out and he comes across this hut or whatever, and is like, "Hey, I'm going to steal some food here because I'm hungry." So he's kind of like Chewbacca. He's always thinking with his stomach.
Yes.
Great, Chewie. Always thinking with your stomach.
Thinking with your stomach. Yep.
Yeah, I love that line.
Yeah.
Lastly, the scene where George Cranleigh plummets off the roof apparently did not go as planned because stuntman Gareth Milne, the guy who plays George Cranleigh, missed his target of cardboard boxes that were supposed to cushion his fall, and he instead struck the ground with his legs. The sound of which is clearly audible in the episode. And thankfully, though, Milne only received severe bruising on his legs and nothing more. So it looks like he got away. He didn't have broken bones, but, ouch, right? Ouch.
Yeah, well, because even when I was watching it, I was just like, okay, did the brother push or was...
No, he didn't push him.
Startled by going for the hug. Because I even had to back up because that fall did not look, it looked like it should have gone a different, now knowing that bit of trivia, it makes sense as to why it didn't look.
Right. Well, I think it was supposed to fall off the roof. But I think it was supposed to be, obviously aimed a little better,
Right.
And, but in the episode, we'll talk about this when we get to the, George's death, is that Charles goes in for a hug. He's like, "Hey, you're my brother. I'm so glad you let Nyssa go and come here, bring it in, and George gets all
Right.
startled, and
Mm-hmm.
because he's very, we saw that earlier in the episode where he's kind of cringing behind the bed in his room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he's kind of fearful in a lot of ways. So consequently, he just recoils, but he's not aware of where his footing was, and that's why he fell off the roof.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah.
so it's just very tragic for this
Mm-hmm.
character. All right.
Very.
All right. Do you have any trivia of your own you want to share?
No.
Okay.
No trivia.
I know we talked a lot of trivia, but I just thought I'd ask. All right.
I enjoy it. I learned some stuff that I appreciate this episode even more.
Well, that's one of the things, when I'm preparing the trivia, there's certain things I come across that I didn't know. So I thought, I hope that people find it equally as interesting. So I just like to share it. So,
Yeah.
all right. Topic number 1 today, we are going to discuss anyone for cricket. So, of course, we're going to talk about the Fifth Doctor. And let's also throw in Lord Charles Cranleigh. Again, no relation.
Mm-hmm.
And we might as well talk about Sir Robert Muir in the process of this, because
Mm-hmm.
Sir Robert has some interesting scenes with the Fifth Doctor as he's trying to get to the bottom of these murders. And obviously has a very interesting experience when he and the sergeant enter the TARDIS that I thought would be good to talk about. So that's why I thought I wanted to group these together. But first and foremost, the main thing I want to talk about here is the opening, because the TARDIS crew, they land on June 11th, 1925, at Cranleigh Halt, which is this railway station, apparently somewhere in rural England. And they walk out of the station, they find this chauffeur waiting for them outside, and he says he's been waiting for the doctor. So the doctor obviously is mildly intrigued.
Yes.
And even more so because the chauffeur tells him that he's expected for a cricket match. So here you have the cricket doctor.
Yes, this doctor's downfall.
Right. The doctor who dresses regularly in cricket whites, I might add.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Being invited by name to a cricket match. So no surprise to anyone knowing the doctor, he accepts and agrees to go along with it.
Quite the ringer.
Right. Yeah. So we get to the match. Yeah. And this is where the actor, Peter Davison, really gets to show off a little bit, because Davison is actually a cricketer himself. He plays. So that's actually him, throwing the ball in a lot of scenes, and we actually get a good wide shot of Davison throwing the ball and knocking over the wicket.
Yeah.
So he's got some skills. At least he did when he was younger.
Yeah, and just his sheer joy when you hear him yell, "How's that?" Or
howza? Yeah,
howza.
Yeah,
it's just like, okay, that was real. That was not acted. That was him doing the bowling.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like they were actually, playing a pretty, mock game for the cameras, obviously. But if you throw a good cricket ball, and I don't follow cricket myself, which is kind of weird, because you think being a Fifth Doctor fan, I would at least know something a little bit about this, but it was, Davison obviously seemed to be enjoying himself, and I think it really came through on screen. So, but the Fifth Doctor, his character did, obviously apparently did really well, because according to Charles, Lord Charles Cranleigh, he's like a first-class batsman and a demon bowler. So, which is one of the lines I love. And it's because of this that George, or excuse me, I keep confusing the brothers. Charles invites the Doctor and his companions to Cranleigh Hall so that they could, just and then hang and join this fancy dress party as kind of like a reward because the Doctor did so good and turned his losing team into a winner. They won the match.
Yeah.
So what did you make of the just that whole sequence with the Doctor, playing cricket and, Tegan was pretty interested, but Adric and Nyssa were completely lost.
Yeah. They were just like, oh, great, another one of the Doctor's,
Yeah. Like, why are we doing this?
And yeah. And Tegan's just like, all right, cool. She's learning a little bit more about the Doctor and
Right.
how he likes certain aspects of Earth's culture. And I'm beginning to wonder about what about this other guy that the Doctor's taking place for with that really interesting nickname.
Right. Yeah, because we find out later in the story that this, the Doctor is obviously impersonating, not really like intentionally, but it's kind of like a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah.
Where Charles was told that, this guy he knows, Smutty, which I want to know why he's called Smutty for one.
Smutty, yeah. Me too.
But Smutty says, was apparently sending down this ringer called the Doctor. That was his nickname. So it just happens to be a very interesting coincidence of the cosmos for the purposes of the story. And the Doctor assumes that identity. He doesn't dispute it, but he does. He doesn't like. He's very non-committal about it. He just kind of like goes along with everybody's assumptions that he is who he's supposed to be. But as a result, it's what gets him in trouble later on when George ends up assuming his identity and trying to attack Anne. And there's dead bodies, and the Doctor ends up essentially being quickly incriminated as a result. Because here he was going to go to this party dressed in a Harlequin suit with a full mask.
Yep.
He's like the only person there with a full mask.
Yes.
So of course
there was only one Harlequin costume, supposedly.
Right.
Well, there were two matching dresses for Nyssa and
Anne.
Anne.
Yeah. So, and Anne was in charge of the costume, so she knows that there was only one Harlequin costume. She's very insistent. And even when the Doctor points out, well, hey, was I wearing a mask? And she goes, yeah. And he's like, well, then how do you know it was me?
Right.
I just know, okay? and the frustrating part about this, I think, for the Doctor was that he was, and we'll talk about this when we talk about Lady Cranleigh, but he ends up getting locked out of his room because of his curiosity gets the better of him. And he ends up stuck in the secret passage. And it's this point where George takes his costume and impersonates him.
Yep.
So that's what kind of got him in trouble. And then, then Lady Cranleigh ends up throwing him under the bus by like, oh, yeah, I don't know what he's talking about here. I don't know. Dead body? All I see is a doll. And the Doctor's just like, I give up. He tries to explain it. And Sir Robert, who is apparently like one of the local police chiefs or something, is, or at least like some detective or something. It's not really made very clear. But he's some legal authority. And as a result, he kind of takes charge of this investigation for the murders. And he's trying to question the Doctor. He's like, look, okay, you're an imposter. We found out that, the real Doctor missed his train. So who are you? and the
Right.
doctor is like, he kind of rolls the dice. And for once, he just comes out and says, well, I'm a Time Lord, and I travel through time and space. Which does not go over
And
well, does it?
no, they're just like, say what?
Yeah. So, like, how you going to back this up? And the doctor's like, well,
Let me show you the
yeah,
TARDIS.
yeah, like, since you're driving me to the police station, can you stop by the train station on the way and, I'll show you. But they get there to the
Right.
train station, and lo and behold, to the surprise of no one, the TARDIS is gone. But it just so happens, because this is only a 2-episode story, the TARDIS is at the police station,
Yeah.
which is where they were going anyway.
You wait. Yeah.
So it's there that the doctor, says, okay, hey, the police sergeant or whatever is like, look, we can't get in. We tried everything, and the doctor's like pulls out a key. It's like, well, this will open it.
Yeah.
So they go inside, and obviously everybody does the, oh my God, it's bigger on the inside,
Yeah.
and that whole thing, and so obviously that kind of leads credence to the doctor's argument that he is someone who travels through time and space.
Yep.
And which comes in handy because, well, hey, the doctor, makes this offer. Is like, well, hey, we need to get back to Cranleigh Hall really quickly. So how about I take you in the TARDIS?
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but I was wondering the first time I saw this, what would have happened if the doctor wasn't able to direct, steer the TARDIS? Because we know this doctor has had problems with navigation.
Yeah.
Trying to get Tegan back to Heathrow Airport.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have gone really sideways for the doctor.
It could have. Yeah.
But
Very. I think the TARDIS might have decided to take pity on him and was like, okay, I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to cooperate.
So you think Sexy told it, decided, oh, okay, you've had a bad day. I'll throw you a bone on this one and take you where you want to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Considering after Tegan's comment in the beginning, which was almost Princess Leia like,
Yeah.
like, you really can't fly this crate type.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, that was a little harsh considering the doctor is helping you try to get back to Heathrow, even though you say you want to stick around a little bit longer.
Well, she's probably kind of given up, to be quite honest with you, by this
Yeah.
point, because the doctor keeps promising, I'm going to get you back, and it's on Earth, but it's like sometimes it's in the 1600s or somewhere else. So not quite Heathrow, or, like he gets her to Heathrow Airport like in the Visitation, but it's like hundreds of years in the past. The airport hasn't even been built yet, so.
Yeah.
So she's probably feeling a little burned about that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But anything else about the doctor or Lord Charles Cranleigh or Sir Robert you want to talk about?
I think we've
covered
everything.
Okay. But I thought that was just a fun way to let Peter Davison have a little fun, with showing kind of like Matt Smith in
The Lodger.
The Lodger, yes, thank you, where he's playing soccer, playing football,
Yes,
British football.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Yeah, because taking advantage of his natural talents, so and his interest in the sport. So,
yes,
yeah, but I thought that was cool, and just kind of it's like finally, okay, now he can justify why he's wearing that cricket garb, I guess.
Yeah.
Why he had the cricket bat, when and why does he have the sweater and the cricket whites and all that? So, all right. So nothing else. Topic number 2. Let's talk the butterfly effect. which is obviously a reference to the butterfly costumes that Nyssa and Anne sport in Anne's wacky idea that because Anne and Nyssa are pretty much twinsies, that they can try to confuse people and have fun with that by wearing the exact same costume. So we'll talk about Nyssa and Anne, and we might as well talk about Tegan, who gets to do the Charleston, and Adric gets to stuff his face, so we can talk about that. And anything else about the fancy dress party that you thought was interesting?
Okay. Yeah.
So what did you make of this fancy dress party and everybody getting into the spirit of things, except for possibly Adric, who just is hungry as all get out?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, but it was kind of a small fancy dress party. When I was thinking party, I was thinking, okay, wall to wall people, and
I think it was more like a lawn party.
Yeah, and I like kind of Anne's idea, like, oh, we can have fun with people, but I was just thinking at first I was like, okay, is there another guy that she's seeing that she really wants to get rid of, and this would be the perfect way to go about doing this?
Well, remember she had a fiance
guy's direction,
because Anne is Charles's fiance. So presumably there wasn't anybody else as far as we know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, the I don't know about you, but I was kind of waiting for like some kind of explanation about why Nyssa and Anne looked alike.
Yes, I was kind of waiting too for that. Yeah. It's like, okay.
We never really got an explanation apart from just it's like one of those wacky coincidences of the universe, I guess.
Right, exactly.
So
just kind of like with Eve Miles with Gwen Cooper, and then lo and behold, come to find out, oh, she's related to the one gal that was in the
Unquiet Dead.
And the Unquiet Dead that happened to be a long distance relation.
Yeah, they explained that. We didn't get an explanation for this. Although, the only thing I could think of is that, everybody has, I guess, somewhere out there's somebody who looks exactly like them, I guess. Everybody has a double, supposedly.
Yes.
Even if you never meet them, they're out there, supposedly. But so, yeah, Anne was just wanting to have some fun, prank her guests, I guess. And Nyssa just kind of goes along with it. She's not really sure, but, she gets into the spirit of it. And we find out that Nyssa actually has a dancing background, which I thought was interesting. Although hers is more formal dancing. Because she kind of throws some shade on Tegan, where Tegan's doing her Charleston dance, and Nyssa's kind of like, you call that dancing?
Yes, and what do you call dancing in Trotton?
Right. But to be fair, at least Tegan was, doing something that's popular in 1925.
Right. Yes.
So, but I thought it was fun. They get out there, and there's a nice little party sequence, and everybody's kind of having a good time. They have a little fun because they kind of do like Nyssa and Anne do this synchronized dance, and then they rush into the hall, and with the purpose of confusing everybody because they come right back out and you don't know which one's which, right? Supposedly.
Yeah.
So this is where we get like Anne, I think, goes to Adric and asks him to dance, while Nyssa goes off with Charles or somebody, I guess.
Yeah.
So the switch was made, and then I think there wasn't an Adric that made a comment that Nyssa can't dance or whatever, and then presumably Nyssa or Anne, one or the other, just says, "Are you sure?" and then goes off and dances.
Right. And I was like, nope, I'm just more happy right here to be grazing by the table, waiting to see what else gets set in front of me.
Right. But poor Anne ends up getting attacked by George, and is very quick to identify the doctor, like we talked about, because he wore the Harlequin costume, even though the doctor's proclaiming his innocence, and I can't really fault her because she's obviously, someone who's obviously never had anything like that happen to her. She comes from this very wealthy upbringing, so I can't imagine that she's had anything like that happen to her before. So she's probably pretty emotionally startled by that, and we saw that she had fainted. So
Right.
So I can't really get mad at her for accusing the doctor, I guess.
No.
But apart from that, Adric, we talked about that he just wanted to keep eating, and I thought it was kind of funny. I don't know about you, but when Nyssa says something about to the effect of are you eating that? And Adric's like, well, you must be Nyssa. because only Nyssa would, drag me for eating all this food.
Right, yeah.
And then later Tegan, throws some shade on him as well. He's like, so she's like, you're gonna eat the whole thing or something like that, and so everybody's busting on Adric for eating all this food.
Yeah. Yes, I am. What's it to ya?
That was pretty funny.
Well, and I was kind of wondering too if Anne didn't know that George was still around, or
Well, I think as far as Anne knew that he was dead, right?
okay. Yeah, I think
because
it was kind of hard to say.
Wasn't Anne and George involved, and then George disappeared,
Yes.
and then she hooked up later with Charles, right?
Because there was some comment in the first episode about marrying into the right family.
Yeah, because they keep asking Nyssa like where she's from, and Nyssa obviously has no knowledge whatsoever of British society, high society. But
what I was wondering is if you would think if they were involved that she would realize, okay, this feels like a George hug, or that sort of thing.
Right. Or maybe just because she was so rattled by everything, she didn't recognize it, perhaps. All she saw was like this deformed figure, and was kind of horrified by that, I guess.
Right. Or maybe she didn't want to say anything, thinking, okay, they already know I struggled with his death. I don't want them thinking I'm even crazy by, oh yeah, I saw something that looked like George but wasn't George.
Yeah, I think that was kind of a missed opportunity in the script, because I thought it would have been nicer if Anne had figured it out first.
Right.
To hey, look, this reminded me of George, like you were saying, either she sees something that George owned, or like you said, felt George's touch, and that kind of reminded her of him, even though in her head she was told that George was dead. But that it would have been nice if there had been something that kind of make her go, well, maybe what if he's not dead? What if this is him? But we never got that.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anything else about Nyssa or Anne or Tegan or Adric?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is that Tegan was, I don't know if it was me, but it almost seemed like Sir Robert was kind of hitting on her a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that too. It's like,
They were dancing, and that's
okay.
fine because, they were,
Yeah,
the older, compared to the, the younger ones like Nyssa and Anne and Adric.
right.
But they were dancing a lot together, and then, Sir Robert's, they kind of like are joking around, like Tegan's talking about, things, it was like all a big hoot, and which amuses Sir Robert. He'd never heard that expression before, and he thought that was kind of charming a little bit. I mean, I don't think it was anything serious, but it just kind of seemed that he was making a little bit more of than an effort to get to know Tegan.
Yeah.
But nothing obviously came of it, but maybe that's just reading
No.
a little too much in the episode. I don't know.
Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. I mean, I think this one would have two parts was good, but I think it could have had a little if they had a third one just to flesh out just a touch.
Maybe, yeah. Or, you could have done more with the mystery,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Make it a little more suspenseful, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Topic number 3. I kind of like this title, so apologies if you don't like it. But topic number 3, My Unfair Lady.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, thank you. I thought that was because this obviously is a reference to Lady Cranleigh,
Mm-hmm.
who refuses to be the doctor's alibi for
Mm-hmm.
her son's murders. So,
Yeah.
so thanks, Lady Cranleigh, for that. So let's talk about her,
Yeah.
and we can finish talking about George. And if you want, we can talk Latoni, the South
Okay.
American indigenous friend of Robert, or excuse me, George's.
Of George.
I'm screwing up names tonight. Apologies for that.
That's all right.
All right. So Lady Cranleigh. One of the main thing that gets revealed by the end of the story is that George was disfigured in South America.
Right.
And we find out that George, the reason why his face is scarred and his hands are scarred or whatever, and they removed his tongue because this tribe called the Kojabi Indians considered the black orchid sacred. And George, being this botanist. Yeah, this explorer botanist, bringing back these rare flowers or whatever. So he wanted to take the flowers, so presumably they punished him for it. And in the process, that just kind of sent him a little bit over the edge. Until he would
do it.
You would think, right?
Yeah.
But he was rescued by another tribe, of which Latoni was a member, who apparently they became friends, and Latoni brought him home and apparently, I guess, agreed to watch over him. And as a result, though, because, well, hey, Lady Cranleigh is in high society, and everybody already thinks George is dead, let's just keep George in the attic or some, little secret stashed away section of the house.
Right. Well, and what really gets me is Lady Cranleigh never tells her husband that, hey, yeah, George is alive.
Yeah.
Very much traumatized, but alive.
Yeah.
No, she just keeps up with the pretense that, yep, he's dead.
Yeah, it's just like she's like, and he's tied up with ropes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, Latoni and Lady Cranleigh are keeping George prisoner in his own house.
Right.
Because of his disfigurements. Maybe they figured, well, he's mentally ill, and maybe Lady Cranleigh doesn't want that to get out. So she figures, well, it's better if I just keep him prisoner and watch over him.
Yeah. Unless there was
some
werewolf type. Yeah. Unless there was some weird werewolf type thing like, oh, once we hit this certain time of the
Yeah,
moon phase month, he gets where he's more agitated and that we have to tie him up. I
right.
mean, those ropes didn't look like they were on that tight, and he was just able to,
Well, I thought it was pretty
okay,
funny
I'm
because
free.
they showed this one scene where Latoni just reaches into a nearby drawer and pulls out this big rope. Like,
Yeah,
like it was just a normal thing. Like, I'm going to reach,
okay,
all right, here's some rope I could tie up
yeah,
George with in the dresser drawer. Okay.
yep. Okay, and
Because
then back to
we
my
all
book.
keep rope in our dresser drawers, right?
And not, no,
No? No?
no,
People
mm-mm,
don't do that? Okay, maybe it's just me, I guess. I
not
don't
me.
know. All right.
Yeah.
But whatever floats your boat. I'm not judging, but
Hmm.
but I thought it was interesting. So Lady Cranleigh, in addition to doing this very horrible thing to her own son, um, after George escapes, and George's first instinct is apparently to kill a servant, and apparently that's the servant we find in the cupboard. At least the doctor finds in this closet or whatever,
Hmm.
stashed in there, Dame Digby, and um, so Lady Cranley wants to keep that under wraps, and then
Yep.
after George decides, well, hey, I'm just going to put on this Harlequin costume and and attack Anne, my former love. Kill this other servant in front of her. So there's like two servants
Hmm.
dead for those of you keeping score. And um, then, goes back, gets rid of the costume, just as the doctor, goes back to his room and then decides, oh, hey, I guess I better go join the party, puts on the costume, and then
Hmm.
immediately gets blamed for the crime that
Yeah.
just happened.
Hmm.
And the doctor, like we talked about this, looks over at Lady Cranleigh like, hey, little help.
Yeah.
You're my alibi. I was with you. Remember that whole thing? We were back there. We found this dead body, and
Hmm.
and there's this guy with a lip, and we had some laughs. Remember that?
Yeah. And she's just like, nah, what body, what guy with the lip?
Yeah, I don't know. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah,
All right.
and the doctor kind of shoots her this look, like, really,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. We're going to be talking later.
yeah. So Lady Cranley not really high on the doctor's list of favorite people at this point. And
Mm-mm.
then sadly, after the truth comes out, George grabs Nyssa. I mean, this is after he escaped again,
Hmm.
and because Latoni had tried to, this is like while George was in the process of killing Latoni, who was supposedly one of his best friends, but
Hmm.
maybe not anymore after keeping him prisoner, I guess.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand that a little bit. Latoni tries to hide the
Hmm.
key to the door to let George out. I don't know why the door locks from the inside, but or I mean, that George couldn't just unlock the door from the inside to go out. But okay, whatever.
Right. Hmm.
Um, maybe it was reversed so that George couldn't get out. I don't know.
That could be.
And so he hides the key in one of the floorboards. George can't find it. So what does he do? Because he's so desperate to escape, he sets fire to the door with newspapers.
Hmm.
And
Desperate times, desperate measures. There
I
wasn't a window you
there
could have
wa-
tried
there
to climb out of?
no, there apparently there wasn't a window, which kind of so like they were keeping him in a room with no window, which is even worse, right?
Right, yeah.
Because I'm sure maybe they're afraid somebody might see him.
True,
Like,
yeah.
okay, who's that scarred guy in the window? Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But
Yeah.
but he sets fire to the door and he's like jumps through the door just as it's starting to break down. But the fire he doesn't put out the fire once he's out. The fire continues to spread throughout the entire hall. And in the process of all this chaos going on, George grabs what he thinks is Anne, but is actually Nyssa. Because, hey, similar butterfly costumes, right?
Yep.
And, hey, similar looking girls, right?
Right.
So he drags her up to the roof. And I don't know what he was intending to do at that point, but again, he's kind of nuts, so we have to let that slide, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And this is up there where the Doctor and Lord Cranleigh give chase and get up there. And I want to give Adric some props here because he did try to go to help them until Sir Robert said, "No, lad, two's enough," which I don't get, but okay.
Yeah.
So, but I will give Adric at least points for making the gesture.
Wanting to try.
Yeah. Because normally, Adric's kind of useless, but but I will give him props there. He did try to help. Maybe he wanted to burn off some of his calories. I don't know that he picked up.
Yeah.
But they get up there, and the Doctor has to try to convince George that the person he's holding isn't Anne.
Yeah.
So, what did you make of that?
Did you chop her shoulder?
Yeah, right. You think that, but they didn't know about the mole, so that would have been a good time to have Tegan go like, look at her shoulder. There should be a mole there, and if it's not, then she's not Anne. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a missed opportunity. But what did you make of the moment where George relents and gives Anne, or who he thinks is Anne, Nyssa, back to the Doctor, only to end up tragically falling into his death later that next moment?
I was breathing a sigh of relief, and I was kind of hoping that he wouldn't have had that tragic fall. They could start to heal, and maybe with Latoni, trying to have him turn the corner and gain some semblance of a normal life, and not have to hide, or something with the wrap up of maybe taking the Black Orchid back.
Right.
Well,
I mean, I don't know what good that would have done. He's already scarred, so I don't know what that could have done.
Yeah, but I mean, at least maybe some sort of healing process. Maybe it was, along with the traumatizing, maybe there was some sort of a curse or whatever.
I see. So you think that maybe if the scarring was like a curse laid on by the tribe?
Right. Yeah. Kind of, like Beauty and the Beast with
I get what you're saying.
With the enchanted rose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that would have made it a little more sense, right? Why it would have made the Black Orchid more essential to the plot.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, we just get that one little reference to it, and then at the end we get that book,
right?
That the lady gives to the Doctor as a thank you.
Yeah. So if we could, I want to talk about that for a minute. So they stay for the funeral, and they say goodbye, and Tegan and Nyssa, I guess, get their fancy dress costumes as parting gifts.
Yeah, makes me wonder if they're still in the TARDIS's wardrobe somewhere.
Chances are, probably, yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. But the Doctor, you mentioned this, that the Doctor gets this gift from Lady Cranleigh, which is a leather-bound copy of George's book, Black Orchid. And the Doctor says, well, I will treasure this always. But I have to wonder, why would he treasure that book? Because all it would do is just remind him that, oh yeah, Lady Cranleigh tried to have me framed for murder.
Right.
So it's kind of
And
like a horrible gift, isn't it?
yeah, and it's just like
Remember,
we couldn't
remember that time your
save
son?
George. We
Yeah,
tried.
they couldn't save George. George died, and
Hmm.
you know, and Lady Cranleigh was so horrible to George. So why would she think that would be a good gift?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Unless, yeah, unless it was her way of here, if I give it to you, I don't have to remember.
Right.
You know, I mean, it probably would have been better if she gave him the orchid too.
Yeah, you would think the orchid would have been at least a little better of a gift, but she's not giving that up apparently.
No.
Um, so it's like, here, take a copy of the book. I got like
Hmm.
dozens of these, but
Yeah.
I
Well, I mean,
just
it's hard to see if there was more than one copy or if that was the only copy.
right. But yeah, I kept wondering, like, why is this? Why would she think this is a good gift for the doctor? And I'm sure the doctor was trying to be polite about it, saying, "Look, I'll treasure this
Yeah.
always." But I'm thinking, if I'm the
Yeah.
doctor, why would I want to be reminded of, like, oh hey, I was framed for this murder. My companion was
Hmm.
almost killed by this poor tragic guy
Yeah.
who fell to his death off the top of a roof.
Right. In a
So
very tragic accident, but still.
yes. So thank you, Lady Cranleigh, for the lovely reminder of this. Yeah.
Hmm. Yes.
But, but the doctor, like I said, was just being polite because, hey, this incarnation is the nice one, right? So I'm sure he was,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
All right.
He doesn't need to have a helper with post-it notes and note cards.
Yes, exactly. All right. Anything else about this story that you want to talk about?
I think we hit everything. I mean, the pacing was good.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable. Air of mystery that we got some answers, but we were still left with some unanswered questions.
Right. Well, for one of my unanswered questions is, does Sir Robert arrest Lady Cranleigh for wrongful imprisonment and also covering up murders that her son did? Because if not, I think he
Yeah.
should.
Mhm.
I think there were
I
some
mean,
crimes
yes,
committed there
there's
that she should be charged with.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes, there's a thing of protecting your son,
Right.
but making everybody believe that he's
Yeah.
dead and not alive,
Right.
I think
And
that kind of takes that off the table.
trying to pin your son's murders on somebody else.
Yes, someone completely innocent, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Just saying, I think there should be some charges there.
Hmm.
All right. Maybe in the sequel. I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any favorite quotes of this story?
Um, I've got two. My first one is the doctor. Why do I always let my curiosity get the better of me?
I love that quote.
That's the question for the ages,
Right.
doctor, and it fits you to a T.
Yeah, I love Davison's performance in that. He's trapped in that secret passage, and he can't figure out how to get out of there, and he's just like, "Oh, you idiot! Why do I always let my curiosity get the better of me?" I love that. All right, what's your other quote, Holly?
The right before they're getting ready for that party. Well, doctor, how would you like to take a cocktail to your bath? Well, certainly a cold drink. And then Adric, what do you do with a cocktail in a bath? And Cranleigh's, drink it, old boy.
Right.
Learning the culture.
And Adric's like, look, I'm from Alzarius, okay? I don't know about what a cocktail is.
It is. Yeah. Well, and then too, I mean, the first time I heard that, I'm just like, wait a minute, are we?
Yeah.
I kind of misheard it until I viewed it again later before having to do this, and it's like, at first I'm like, are they rum runners too?
Right.
Because that's kind of when I first was like, okay, all right.
Well, that reminds me. That reminds me of the scene. There's early on when they first arrive at Cranleigh Hall. They're ordering drinks or whatever, and Tegan says, like, I'll have a screwdriver. And then
Yeah.
part of me kind of wanted, like, is that a sonic screwdriver? But
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
Nyssa tries to order the same thing, and the doctor kind of like, no, nixnay, ixnay.
Yeah. Nope.
Yeah. So, and
Nice cool
then I think,
glass of lemonade
yeah,
with
how
lots
about
of ice.
yeah, I think we'll have an orange juice, just the orange juice.
Or orange juice.
Yeah, for her, for
Yes.
Nyssa, yeah. But all right, my favorite quotes. Let's see. Adric with the doctor when they first arrive at the railway station. Adric goes, "So, what is a railway station?" And the doctor explains, "Well, a place where one embarks and disembarks from compartments on wheels drawn along these tracks by a steam engine, rarely on time." And Nyssa says, "What a very silly activity." And the doctor replies, "You think so? As a boy, I always wanted to drive one." And
Oh, if the Doctor and Doc Brown ever got together, that would be one interesting train.
yeah, and then I got a couple quick ones. Nyssa with
Okay.
Nyssa with Adric, where like Adric's piling on the food, right, at the buffet table, and Nyssa goes, "You pig," and Adric replies, "You can only be Nyssa," and Nyssa says, "Just look at that," and then Adric's like, "Well, I didn't have any breakfast."
All right, little hobbit.
I'm having second breakfast.
Yes.
Ooh, second breakfast.
We need to keep the math genius fed, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's the second law of thermodynamics, all that processing power that requires fuel, right? So
Yes.
and then the doctor's line, which I love the shade on this one that he gives her. He goes, "Thank you, Lady Cranleigh, for a delightfully unexpected afternoon." You be.
Exactly, yes.
Right?
Like, here I was minding my own business, and now I'm accused with 2 murders?
Right.
Yay!
I had this great day playing cricket, and I kicked ass, and, I came back here for some drinks and relaxation, and now I'm framed for murder, and you're my alibi, and you won't help me out. Thank you so very bloody much, Lady Cranleigh.
Yes. Here, off the Christmas card list.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Definitely on the naughty list. All right. What's your rating for this story, Holly?
9 out of 10 perfectly pitched cricket balls.
Excellent. You really like this one. All right. I'm giving this one a little less than you, but I really enjoy it as well. I think it's kind of underrated. I give it 8.5 out of 10 awkward gift copies of Black Orchid.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So if now reverse the polarity, because remember we're going forward in time this time from the classic era. We kind of hinted this already, so it probably won't come as much of a surprise. But so I'm going to recommend, if you enjoyed Black Orchid, I recommend The Unicorn and the Wasp.
Yay!
Because this was the 7th episode of Series 4 in 2008, written by Gareth Roberts. And one of the main connections right off the bat is they arrive in 1926, which is the year after Black Orchid's setting. So it's just like 1 year later, The Unicorn and the Wasp happens. And in this one, of course, the 10th Doctor and Donna invite themselves to a dinner party. Hey, inviting themselves to a dinner party. That sounds a little familiar too, right?
Possibly go wrong, yes.
Yeah. Hosted by Lady Clemency Edison and her husband, Colonel Hugh Kirbishley. And they're thrilled to find, of course, that one of their guests is Agatha Christie. And the doctor realizes that they've arrived on the day that she will inexplicably disappear for 10 days. And, of course, one of the guests is suddenly found dead in the library. So it's a murder mystery as well, just like Black Orchid. So that's
And no Mr. Body in sight.
no Mr. Body. Yes, exactly. For those of you who hopefully tuned into Drunk Cinema to watch Clue right along with us recently, because we had fun watching that murder mystery as well. So a little shout out to Drunk Cinema fans out there.
Yep.
So yeah, you obviously I think a lot of people are familiar with the story, so I don't think I need to go into it. But yeah, it's very much like Black Orchid in a lot of ways. It's the time period, the murder mystery, the dinner party. So if you enjoyed Black Orchid, I definitely recommend checking out the Unicorn and the Wasp. If nothing else, because Unicorn and the Wasp is a very fun episode.
Yes, it is.
I had a lot of fun watching that one. And then Gareth Roberts is one of my favorite writers from Tennant's era. He wrote some very fun scripts, and I really enjoyed them. So listener feedback. Well, obviously Holly's here, so sadly we don't get her feedback, but we did get her review along with it.
Yeah.
Yours truly. So that just leaves Dave Proctor writing in.
Yay!
So Dave wrote in about Black Orchid, so thank you, Dave, for writing in, for one.
Yes.
Hello, TARDIS crew, Dave writes. It was March 1st, 1982. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were in power, and the Cold War was at its pinnacle. The Fifth Doctor was playing cricket and solving crimes. What a world this was then. I hadn't seen this story before, and I didn't know what to expect. One cannot complain about pacing too much because it's wrapped up in about an hour. So, Jesse Jackson, if you're listening, you can't fault the pacing on this one because it's only 45 minutes long. So, in 1924 wasn't so far back that the TARDIS crew couldn't relate. Well, at least the one human could. One can't have a manor house without secret passageways. Apparently, a manor house also has fancy dress costumes on standby.
Yeah, I found that a little convenient. Like, oh yeah, we have extras. Really? Okay.
Maybe this wasn't their first fancy dress ball.
True.
Because it was, intended as a fundraiser, right? So maybe they overordered. I don't know. But
yeah,
I can only imagine a 2021 prosecutor trying to convict someone if no one saw his face, right? Yeah, but again, this was 1925, so maybe they could get away with it then. I wasn't aware that the Doctor gave tours of the TARDIS even to defend himself. Well, he did this episode. Maybe that's why he stopped the tours. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was surprised that he risked the small jump to the manor house, or that motley crew could have been the companions for a long while, right? Like we said, maybe the TARDIS took pity on him.
Yeah.
I give this story 8.5 flappers doing the Charleston. It was a hoot.
Hey.
I see what you did there, Dave.
Yes.
I'm glad y'all are well, and we missed Jesse, but it was cool to hear him last week. Yes, it was, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And we also, we obviously here miss Jesse as well. Dave adds, it was also pretty cool to meet Mrs. Skaggs.
Yay!
Well, I've always thought so, but maybe I'm a little biased. But I'm supposed to be, right? I'm supposed to be biased. Have a great week. Thanks, David K. Proctor. So thank you, Dave.
Yes, thanks, Dave.
It's always great to hear from you, and thank you so much for writing, especially with Holly here. I really appreciate it. So if you want to be like Dave, and please do, write to us here at Next Stop Everywhere, smg@gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere, smg@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at Next Stop SMG on Twitter. Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Holly, where can everybody hear what you're up to? Perhaps with some 4 other-ish fangirls, perhaps?
Yes, you can hear me as 1/5 of the 5-ish fangirls. You can find us at the 5ishfangirls.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and you can find me personally on Instagram and Twitter at hollymac_79.
Yes, and you definitely do. Now, didn't the 5-ish Fangirls podcast just celebrate an anniversary?
Yes, we just celebrated our 7th birthday.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. It doesn't seem like it's been 7 years.
Well, Next Stop Everywhere turns, I think, 7 in September, I believe.
Oh, cool.
So we're coming up on ours as well. So lucky 7 for everybody.
Yes, exactly.
So everybody, please check out the Fighters Fangirls podcast because obviously Holly is awesome. And we know Rachel's awesome because they've been on here on the podcast. So we want to support them and we want to support their friends and their fellow fangirls. And so everybody give them some love because they're always so nice to us here at Next Stop Everywhere. They definitely get my full support and hopefully yours as well. As for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Facebook, and at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, or my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here, Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, the Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish audios, and more. And then all kinds of comic book news, sci-fi news, whatever geek news I'm interested in that particular week. And news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media Group, including the Phantom Zone podcast, where DJ Nick, whom you've heard here on Next Stop Everywhere, and I are going to be starting our first episode review of Loki this weekend. So I hope everybody checks that out. That's the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe show. And that's, like I said, Holly and I have already watched it, and we thought it was very peachy keen and very, very wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. So definitely recommend Doctor Who fans check that out if you're not already doing so. And then come check us out on the Phantom Zone, where we're going to talk about it. And Nick, we're going to change up the format a little bit for this 6 weeks, as Nick's going to be driving the bus, as I understand it. So now he gets to figure out all the topics and do all the hard lifting. So, but I'm sure he'll be fine because he always does such a great job on his podcast. So
Yes.
And my only fear is that everybody's going to like Nick better, and they won't want me doing it ever again. So I might be out of a job, I guess. But oh well, still got Next Stop Everywhere, I guess. All right. But no, seriously, everybody, please check us out there, and I'm sure Nick would appreciate it. Then also Ghosted with the Twin Peaks podcast I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here as well on Next Stop Everywhere, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch. And right now we recently recorded our second episode of David Lynch's Hotel Room, which was this very obscure HBO series from 1993. And our next episode, we're going to be wrapping that up with an episode called Blackout from Hotel Room that featured Crispin Glover and Alicia Witt. And so that should be very interesting, especially since Zan has a little bit of a crush on Crispin Glover. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of fangirl drooling involved as well. That one, just a little bit. But I hope everybody checks it out. And then please check out Drunk Cinema, where we just had Christine Peruski on last time to discuss Clue, you know, the movie from the 80s where it was a murder mystery. So if you're kind of still in that murder mystery mood, check out the movie Clue, and you can listen to our commentary as she joins Zan and I for that. And then coming up this week, as long as all goes well, Zan and I are going to be discussing, by popular demand of our Facebook poll, Ghostbusters 1984.
Nice.
So who are you going to call? Well, you're going to call Zan and me, and we'll get to you whenever we can, I guess. But this is one of our favorite movies. This is one Zan and I love quoting constantly. So you know we're going to have a lot of fun with this. I know a lot of people have wanted us to do this one. And I just did my rewatch of Ghostbusters for like the umpteenth time. So I had a lot of fun watching that one. And I can't wait till Friday because I think Zan and I are going to have a ball doing this one.
I can't wait.
Yeah, this would be a real treat, I think. And I hope everybody tunes in and checks it out. So on Drunk Cinema. All right. That's all I've got going on. Holly, thank you so much for joining me once again.
Thank you.
Can't wait to our next time, but hope you had fun. And
I sure did.
Any final thoughts you want to share with everybody before we sign off?
No, I'm having a blast, but hey, what's next week's episode gonna be?
Well, that's a great segue, Holly. I think just in 2 weeks, we're going to be shifting to a bi-weekly schedule for the summer, especially with Jesse off. And actually also because, especially next Wednesday, because a week from today is yours truly's 52nd birthday.
Well, happy early birthday.
So my birthday treat is to lighten my evening load by not recording Next Stop Everywhere. So I hope everybody is patient with me in the process, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for episode 236, as we're going to do We haven't done one of these since, I think, Christmas time last year. We're going to go back to the Peter Capaldi era, which we haven't done for, like I said, for a long time, to watch The Eaters of Light.
Okay.
As part of our revisited series where we go back and do commentaries for the episodes we've already discussed. And joining me for that one is Christine Peruski herself, because she's the one who actually requested The Eaters of Light, because
Cool.
she is apparently a big Nardole fan. And this is an episode that features Nardole pretty heavily.
Yes.
So if you're a fan of Matt Lucas, fan of Nardole, or as Capaldi likes to call him, Nardole,
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll enjoy this one. And Christine, she was just on Drunk Cinema, so I know she's excellent at doing the commentaries. And I think you guys are in for a treat next time.
Yay.
Yay, right?
Yes.
So we're finally doing some Capaldi. I've done that in a while. And Holly, I know you're going to be back hopefully later this summer. Talk some more Doctor Who with yours truly. So I can't wait for that. So thank you again.
Me either. You're very welcome.
Everybody else, come back 2 weeks. Episode 236, The Eaters of Light, one of our revisited episodes with Christine Peruski and yours truly, right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Night.